And we're live. Hi, Doug, and thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a real pleasure. I feel like I know you. I've been watching so much of your stuff this week.
Oh,
It's
awesome.
like, I've got a commute, so I'm like watching your videos and you, your documentaries and stuff on various subjects, but mainly Scientology. And obviously, the story is the backdrop here is that you entered Scientology at 9 years old.
Yeah, it's about right.
Um, which your father led you into. Um, now, do you want to walk us into what led up to that and then what led after that? I know it's like, as you say, it's like a 4 hour conversation, but do you want to talk about that a bit?
Sure, I can make it brief. I'll give the whole story as quickly as I can. So yeah, around 9 or 10 years old. Of course, I don't remember exactly when, but I was young, and my dad, he actually explained this to me. So I have this is a because as I became a Scientologist, he would open up and tell me how he got into it. So what he told me is he saw an ad in the bottom of a newspaper while he was at work one day, and it had something to do with communication. Scientology, and L. Ron Hubbard, the founder, was a master salesman, so he knew how to push what's called people's buttons. And one of the buttons is communication. Sometimes people have a problem communicating or whatever. That was my dad's button because he didn't know how to communicate very well with the family. So it said Dianetics, which is the precursor to Scientology. And sometimes, by the way, they'll sell it under Dianetics because Scientology has such a terrible name. So my dad didn't know it was Scientology, but he just saw this thing that said Dianetics, learn how to communicate better. So that triggered him to go down to the local mission, which is only about 10 minutes away from where he worked. We live in Camarillo, California. His work is in a place called Ventura, California, and the mission, or I'm sorry, Oxnard, California. And then Ventura, California, which is where the mission was, is about 10 minutes away. So he goes down there that day, and he came back a completely different person. I don't know exactly what happened that day, and we can get into it more, and I can give you my guess. But to make a really long story short, he had some form of hypnosis going on because his eyes looked different. They were kind of dead, and he started talking differently, already talking in Scientology language. So
In
he
one
spent,
day.
yes, because what I think happened is he spent the entire day and night down there and actually signed up and started the communication course, which we can talk about a little bit later. That's what would have given him that stare and the funny way of talking and already being indoctrinated into Scientology words if he was down there for 8 or 10 hours that day, right? So what happened is this isn't always what happens. They don't, it usually takes a little time to kind of hook someone in, but sometimes they can get into it right away. What they did is they took my dad. What they have any aspiring Scientologists do is they have you fill out a personality test, which is 200 questions, and then you go into a room and you have it evaluated by the Scientologist, and they're trained how to find your ruin. A human translation is a vulnerability. So they found my dad's vulnerability, and after that, they say for $50, Scientology can handle that, whether that be cash or credit. So they get you right onto the course that day if they can. So I imagine he would have been doing the communication course, learning the terms, and he came back with that hypnotized look. And also, they have what's called where they find that ruin is called a reg cycle or a registration cycle. How much money can we squeeze out of this guy that we just broke down? So they tried to sell my dad an auditing package too. All I know is that the figure that he needed to borrow from his brother when he came back to the house that night, he said, I need to borrow $10,000 from my brother, which is money we didn't have at the time, because I want to give it to the strange new thing I discovered called Scientology, which I know is going to help me out in all of our problems. That's what he came back that night saying to my mom. My mom didn't know what was happening. They fought, and I slept upstairs, and I could hear him every night for weeks on end arguing about this thing called Scientology. I had no idea what it was. I did recognize the change in my father, as did my mom. It freaked all of us out, and we didn't know what the hell it was or what they did to him that day or why he was coming back asking for this money. It was a complete blindsiding, you
I'm
know?
sorry, what year is this, Doug?
I was born in July 1973. If I was 9, this would be 82, 83-ish. So this is 82, 83, before the internet, before you could type in Xenu, what are the secret society, any of it, bro. We didn't know anything about this. So what happened, to make a long story short? I want to emphasize that once somebody gets into Scientology, they train you down there how to get everybody else in, that it's a do or die mission. And it's a serious thing where you're indoctrinated very quickly on how to handle family members or anybody that's going to be negative about it. Because L. Ron Hubbard knew that it was a cult and that when you bring it home to the family, they're going to have questions. So my dad was already drilled on day one on how to handle the potential questions. What is it? Blah, blah, blah. What they're trained to do is to then break down every other person, again, with things that they teach you on the courses that you learn. So my dad was very quickly getting trained on how to handle objections from me and my mother. And one of those ways that they handle that is they say, before you say that this is negative or what happened to you or what do you mean, come down and check it out and see for yourself. Do you want to make a decision on something that you don't even check out for yourself? So that's the hook to get my mother went down there and said, fine. Because my dad was serious about this and they programmed him hard on that first day. So it was actually a matter of, if I'm not allowed to do this, we might have to get a divorce. So rather than my mom wanting to possibly face that, it made sense to her, okay, let me go check it out before, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe I'm, overreacting. So then they got her into that room and found her ruin, and she went through the same thing. So now both of them are on board, and then they were trained how to break me down. And the way they would do that, now I was a resistant case. It took me a long time to get into it because I didn't know what Scientology was. I just didn't like it right out of the gate. I knew something was wrong. So my parents would sit me down when I'd ever have a problem in school or with a girlfriend or whatever. And they would say, they would let me offload for an hour or 2 hours. I try to be honest and open with them. And then at the very end, they'd say, we'd like to pay for a course and have you take it down in Scientology because we believe that it will help with your problems in this particular area. Every time they did that, I told them to go fuck themselves. I would slam the door. I would walk away. When I had a car, I would drive away. I resisted forever, but eventually they did get me down there. And Scientology doesn't hit you with all the crazy shit until you're very deep into it. The initial courses make a shitload of sense. And we can go into that stuff later too, if you want.
Right.
But they really only got me around 19 or 20 when I was in a vulnerable or a transitional point, which is when most people fall into cults. And I had had enough indoctrination because eventually, rather than being punished for 3 months, what they would say is, do you want to be punished for a month or 2 months or whatever? Or we won't punish you if you take a week course down at Scientology that we believe will help you. Eventually, that proposition seemed better than being locked up in my room for a month away from my friends. So as I went down there and did the courses, the seeds of indoctrination were going in bit by bit. And as I said, it makes a shitload of sense at the beginning. So I was already primed and pumped by around 19 or 20 that when I hit a broken point, they were probably going to be able to get me in. And they did. I immediately took to it. I'm making a long story short, but I had been in and around it for most of my childhood. I knew what to expect. I knew what to say in that room to tell them what my ruin was. I had plenty of ruins I wanted to offload. I finally trusted him and I went with it. And from about 19 to 20 up until 33, I was completely over head over heels. I thought I found the greatest thing in the world. They promised you that they have an answer to every problem you ever had. And it really seemed like Hubbard did. I didn't know I was involved in a quote unquote satanic cult. I didn't know I was being put under hypnosis in their drills and their choruses. I knew nothing about hypnotism. I knew nothing about the advanced psychological techniques that Hubbard was using on us. So to me, it seemed amazing. And I'd never experienced what I've experienced down there in the way of going into an altered state of consciousness. I knew nothing about that. So I was having revelations, experiences, and very heady trips that were the equivalent of dropping acid. And because I wasn't doing drugs, I felt like, dude, if I can feel this way, have these kind of revelations and learn all the secrets to life and be around what we were told is the most ethical, brilliant man on the planet, then I found my freaking spiritual home that I didn't even know I was looking for. And then a long story short, the only reason I got out, this might have happened anyways, because it's a long story, but I was subconsciously starting to wake up before this event happened. But I was in an acting class in Los Angeles. I was trying to be an actor. Then finally I broke through or whatever. And that's a whole nother story. But right around the time when I broke through, my somebody dropped a book off on my doorstep. This one. It's called Combating Cult Mind Control by Steve Hassan. As soon as this guy dropped this book off, we were programmed in Scientology that anybody that says anything negative about Scientology, we have to go down to the church and report them with something they call a knowledge report. So rather than read this, he had a stack of books, and this one was on the top. I was so offended that this guy thought I was in a cult because I knew I wasn't. And no cult member and nobody under mind control can see that that's their situation. You can't see it. So I was going to go down to the church and report this guy that day. Just because I was too lazy and it was already late in the evening, after a few hours, I finally picked this freaking book up. And within 20 minutes, I was out of it. I wish I could just show you what's in here. Because
Who's the writer there?
Steve Hassan.
So
It says,
he was the one who personally dropped the book off?
no, that's the author. It was a friend from my acting class who wasn't a Scientologist, that knew I was a Scientologist, knew it was a cult. And he wasn't so much a friend. He's since turned, he's not the greatest person, but he was doing it to get back at me. He was doing it to, he didn't think he was going to actually snap me out of it. He's just like, how can I piss Doug off? But I'm glad that he did, because like I said, 20 minutes of reading that freaking thing, I was out of Scientology. My life's never been the same. And that was in January 2008. And we're over 14 years later. I'm still learning new things and still recovering from that experience.
That's nuts. So what's my next question? We went over so much there in a long period of time. So, so you actually joined, let me see. So was your family wealthy, and did they see the wealth, or did you have to scrub the decks to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. They weren't wealthy to begin with, but Scientology is not initially expensive. It's only expensive if you're going to go up their bridge. They have a whole series of steps that leads from a $50 course at the beginning to now maybe a couple thousand for their pseudo drug rehabilitation step, which is called the purification rundown. Then a few more thousand for the auditing, which is where you get on the e-meter and you do their psychotherapy with the cans, all the way up to the OT or confidential levels. And at that point, you're hundreds of thousands of dollars deep. So you can't go spiritually free, quote unquote, unless you get to the top of that bridge. And it's about a minimum of $1 million to get to the top, but they sell it as if it's relatively cheap at the beginning. So you don't have to be rich to start out. You'll drop out if you don't have a lot of money, probably, or you can just stay at the lower levels as a medium income person and just take courses and their cheaper stuff once in a while. But the hardcore Scientologists, my family and stuff, we weren't initially rich, not at all. We were middle income to lower-ish. But when my dad got into Scientology, and the way I describe it in one sentence is selling your soul to the devil, then you can make money and have things change. And my dad's income and everything did go up. I want to clarify that, though, so people don't run down to Scientology and join thinking it's going to, so they can become rich. There's a catch to that. If you want to have your conscience deleted, if you want to be under mind control, if you want to do every single thing and live your life around what the psychopath L. Ron Hubbard told you to do, if you're really like willing to do that, then I do think that there is something to their deeper, darker aspects and levels that can allow you to improve your life. But I'm not willing to do that. And it doesn't happen to everybody. And it's not a bargain that people should make or have any idea that that's actually the bargain that they are making, because it's not sold as sell your soul to the devil, sign on the dotted line, and we'll make your career in Hollywood happen, or we'll make your parents successful. There's a give and take with that. My dad may be doing well in his life financially, but soul-wise, his soul took off a long, long time ago.
So, like for instance, when I came to America at first, it was 2000, and if they had gotten me 10 years earlier, when I was a real seeker, and I was like,
Yeah.
I just wanted to join any cult. I mean, I was just like looking Hare Krishna, OTO, Scientology and stuff. I mean, I would have signed up for anything just to I don't know, just to belong or something. I don't know what it was, but when I first went there, I think the first course was free, and that was the course. I don't know what you call it, but the course was that you would sit and practice with a partner. You would practice like trying to expel an engram. Say something traumatic had happened in your life, and you would both keep asking each other more details about it, more details about it, until you felt happy about it and it didn't have any hold over you anymore. I think that course was free. That was the first course. But in the church in Boston, actually, they had this big brownstone on Beacon Street, which is a really expensive area in Boston. And since they have downgraded, probably because of all the protests by what's their name, Anonymous and stuff, and Going Clear and stuff like that, they downgraded, and apparently they rented a place in Quincy and they skipped out on their lease and they got sued, and now they're in some like shithole in Alston, in Boston, and it's a big downgrade. But those people were, I don't want to say creepy. I think that's the wrong word, but everybody I met in there's a different word though. I don't know what it is. Yeah, creepy, but there's a different word for everybody I met in there. I mean, they're running around and they're smiling, but there's something behind the smile that I couldn't put my finger on, but it was sinister.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was older, I kind of picked up on it right away. I'm not, I'm susceptible to things like cults and stuff in the first place.
That's good that you even know that about yourself, because most people would say that they're not, when everybody kind of could be at the right place, right time.
Yeah, and I felt these people were just kind of like nerds, but
yeah, that's a great point, by the way.
Extreme nerds, but with no personality, no sense of humor.
Yeah,
and I just felt, because I have a sense of humor, so I was like trying to joke with them all the time, and I wasn't getting anything back, and I'm like, what's wrong with these people? They're like just party poopers, they don't laugh at anything, and it's just like, And I remember when I was taking the e-meter test, the results of the auditing course I had just taken, the guy was like I was holding the cans, and he was asking me questions, and he kept looking up whenever I answered a question, really, really sinister looking. And he would he would just peer at me, and I'd be like, what the fuck's wrong? This guy isn't, was he not believing me or something? Because he was asking me, how did you find the course? Was it beneficial to you? All that kind of shit. I don't know what that course was called.
It sounds like some kind of Dianetics course, by the way. If you would have sat down there and done engrams, it would have been some form of what's called Dianetics, because that's where you run the engrams, and they also would introduce new people via Dianetics too. So I'm sure you did some version of that.
Yeah, and they said if you weren't comfortable sharing this with a person, you could do it with a dummy. You could have a dummy in front of you, just like some kind of a dummy, and you could share with the dummy.
You were doing Dianetic auditing and practicing how to be an auditor. Right.
Well, that's the first thing I read was Dianetics, and I couldn't make head nor tail of it, but I did notice the archaic language in it. He was calling black people Negroes and stuff like that. And that stuck out to me. I'm like, this guy's from a different era than I am. And he was kind of, I can't remember exactly, but in Dianetics, I think he was like looking down on black people and stuff like that.
Yeah, everybody. He's a homophobe. He's a racist. He's a very evil man. The only reason that kind of stuff went over my head, because you're triggering a lot of memories, man, is because there was something about, once I got hooked on the auditing, once I experienced that altered state of consciousness, that kind of, first of all, it was shutting down my critical thinking. And then he would say it kind of in a humorous way where you couldn't tell if he was joking or if he was serious. Remember him talking about Chinese people, he'd call them chinks, and then he would make, this really racist comment about black people, but he would like laugh like any sociopath, or he would kind of get
like a crazy guy with his fucked up teeth.
Yeah, it's amazing that all that I sussed all that too, man. I mean, like I said, I was one of, what you reminded me of? The nerd thing. When I first went down there as a kid, that's what I saw too. I was like, there's something seriously off with these people. They even looked weird. Like you could tell that these were people that were in here because something was wrong to them. They were sold this bill of goods, and then this is their new purpose to make the nerds like suddenly superhumans. A lot of them are nerds, dude. But you know what? Because I'm in Los Angeles, they had a few people around the organization that were really attractive girls, and really, so there was a few that seemed to really have their shit together, which kind of
Right.
made me go, okay, I see the nerd thing. And obviously they're here because they have no purpose in life.
Right.
But there was, I'm right near LA. I grew up in Camarillo, which is an hour away. And then when I got out to LA, there was a bunch of attractive Scientologists and successful business people and artists and famous celebrities. So, but that never left me, the fact that so much of them just, dude, even down to the way their body looked. I don't give a crap how anybody's body looked. I'm just saying the trauma that they were experiencing in Scientology, it seemed to actually show in their physicality, where something seemed really wrong with them. That was one of the first things I noticed when I went down to the mission myself, is these guys, and also the evil vibe, the lack of humor. Everything was serious.
Yeah, there was a serious lack of humor. So you joined
Yeah.
eventually joined the Sea Org, which for anybody
No, I did not. I never
you
signed that.
didn't.
I never signed that billion-year contract. I did join staff temporarily, just to
Oh, staff.
differentiate real quick. Back in the day, they had missions. They don't really have them anymore. You do have to kind of sign that billion-year contract because they have big organizations that are being pushed. But back in the day, you could sign a staff contract for 2.5 or 5 years. And I signed the one for 2.5 years, and I last 2.5 weeks before I fucking went nuts. That's a whole story I cover on that Scientology series. But I did not join that billion-year contract, even though they must have tried to get me. I've been locked in rooms. I was taken above Celebrity Center here in Los Angeles, told to look out at the world. And what are you doing, wasting your time trying to be an actor? We got to save the planet, Doug. We got to get you to sign this contract and be in a bigger purpose. I had to resist a lot not to sign that contract, but they never got me because I felt super guilty, bro, just trying to be an actor. I really wanted to join their team, but it was too much of a sacrifice. I knew what they went through, and I wasn't willing to give up my life, even though I believed in the cause. That's something they play on real hard, bro. Once they got you hooked on Scientology, even if you have a lot of money, they will try to get you on staff, because it's hard to get people to sign that billion-year contract. They basically work for free 7 days a week, and you're going to be their slave, and that's hard to get somebody. So whenever they have somebody that's hooked on the line, part of being a Scientologist is constantly having to resist signing that freaking contract under extreme pressure and guilt.
So you're primarily, you wanted to be an actor. That was your lifelong dream. When did that start, and how did Scientology impede that? I thought it would. I thought it would assist that.
It's both, but not really. So first of all, just like the whole Scientology experience, it's not something I would recommend anybody to go into, but it was part of my life experience. So it's more of like integrating it rather than, Scientology is just all evil, even though it's a trap that you're walking into, and it's going to fuck your life up. But I wouldn't take it back, man, just because, one, I can't. And two, I learned a lot from being in, and especially getting out and deprogramming completely opened up my eyes to the bigger world. I'm not sure that would have ever happened minus experiencing something as trippy as Scientology, but they seem to simultaneously have helped me in my acting career while stopping it. And just to clarify, like, nothing's really black and white in my head anymore, which is cult thinking. There's shades of gray. So they love bomb you, and you have a new environment of friends and people that are all on the same purpose. They don't feel like they're conning you because they don't feel like they were conned. So they're legitimately trying to help you, organize your life so you can do better at auditions. They do know some casting directors. Maybe they can help get you to see this person. Not so much the connections, but they're dedicated to helping you become a better Scientologist because they believe in it. So it seems to help you. I never would have moved to Hollywood, bro, if I didn't join Scientology, because it would have been too intimidating going into that big of a world. But because I had Celebrity Center to go to, I only lived an hour away. I grew up in Camarillo, California, and then an hour away was this huge world called Hollywood. But because I had a Scientology facility to go to, and John Travolta was in it, Tom Cruise, and all these people, I felt confident to move here. I had a clique/cult to join. And so it would seem to have helped in my confidence and having a place to land, instant friends. We're all on the same page with Scientology. So that part of it is quote unquote beneficial. But what's the cost of that? Nobody needs Scientology to make it. There's plenty of actors that just do it with their own, effort. What I didn't know I was stepping into is with that love bombing and that pseudo help, I'm now to dedicate my entire thought patterns around the thought patterns of a psychopath. And you have to do everything he says and live your life by that. And you're being put under mind control. So you can't suss that I was being damaged every day, dude, that I was doing these choruses. It's not an environment that's sane or healthy. But because I didn't know that, I felt like Scientology gave me my acting career and everything else. I attributed in Scientology or any cult, you attribute everything positive that happens to your life because of the cult leader, the technology you're learning, and the environment. And you're told anything that happens negatively to you in Scientology is your fault. You didn't do the technology right. You did something wrong. So until you suss all that, it seemed like, I thought Scientology was the most amazing thing ever, but it actually, again, I told you before we went live here, I'm 14 years out of Scientology right now, and I'm still recovering and will be for the rest of my life just from that experience,
You spent most of your formative years in Scientology. Now, there are Scientology acting schools too,
Mm-hmm.
dedicated acting schools. Now, did that help you, or do you think that was an in for you, or was it just a tool?
I know this is going to sound like a paradox again. Because I lived it, I can't undo it. And I learned a lot from getting out and the experience itself. I got things out of it that wouldn't have happened otherwise. But at the same time, did I need to join a Scientology acting school? Did I
Right.
need to? I didn't need any of it. But because I lack self-confidence, and who the hell doesn't? Just
Right.
like you were telling me, you're a seeker, and so was I. I'm kind of an artist. I wanted to do something outside of the system. I believed in my dreams, and I believed in that you could be better, a better person, which is what L. Ron Hubbard was telling us. So as long as I was under that, it's like placebo effect. As long as I believed that, it appeared to give me more confidence in the audition rooms. It felt special to be a part of a group that we only had the answers. It also caused me to shut down my emotions, become a secondary sociopath, and look down on anybody that wasn't in Scientology. And just to give you an idea of that, the programming and the know best is so extreme in Scientology that even though I appeared to be a normal person to my non-Scientology friends on the outside, I learned to look at the outside world like any cult member does as very evil, and these people are wrong. And until they get rid of their reactive minds, until they run out all those engrams like you were doing, these are lesser people. I had no sympathy for homeless people. Scientology has this phrase that says, we make the able more able. That's another that's another way of saying, if you don't have money or you're, somebody that's down and out, get the fuck out of here. And they'll actually try to get you to sign that billionaire contract if you have no money. So they don't necessarily turn you away. But the level of arrogance, sociopathy, bro, and looking down on people, shutting my emotions down, one of the biggest things that happened when I got out is to be able to cry for the first time, to actually feel something. And I cried for years and I went through some extreme emotions, but I was like, thank God I can feel something. Thank God these emotions are actually in me. I thought I was a sociopath, bro. And that's the trade-off. There's really actually nothing positive about it. But like I said, if you believe in it, placebo effect, if you can't see what's happening, you will then act a superior way. You will have an arrogance and a confidence in the audition rooms. And so, yes, that could help and probably did help me out a bit. But once I got out of it, I didn't need any of that. And then we're back to the paradox where I did pick up some tools and tips in the communication course and the audit. I picked up a lot of tips and tools because he stole from all the greatest philosophers, everyone from Plato to he's got some Socrates in there. He claimed to be Buddha reincarnate. He's got Crowley. He's got Gnosticism. Bro, he took the best of the best, stole it, watered it down, and gave us a mind control / hypnosis version of how to use all the best philosophers to his advantage. But nobody needs any of that. Skip Scientology, skip the mind control, study the best people, go within, and you can access those altered states of consciousness that you get in an auditing session anyways. That's a natural part of our mind. There's ways to do it where you don't have to pay anybody a dime. You don't have to look up to any guru, and you can find all the answers with your own study and your own effort. I don't think you need anybody to do that. And that, by the way, that right there, that's the biggest thing I got out of the entire experience of being under mind control and getting out, as torturous as it was. It allowed me to see through all the bullshit and to trust myself, because that's why I got sucked in there anyways. I didn't know who I was. I thought the answers lied outside of me. And I thought that I have to look to authority figures, government, my parents, my cult leader. I'm just little me. I have, nothing. I need to look to other people to tell me what to do. Because that wasn't an option when I got out of the cult, it forced a lot of trauma and going within and forced study to understand what happened to me. And that's the greatest gift I ever got, because I realized we already have all that in us. We don't need any gurus to tell us shit. But I wasn't going to pop out of the womb with that. I'm thankful for the Scientology experience for crushing me so badly that it forced me, because Cornell, if I didn't have to look for my own answers, like the main thing about Scientology and what was so attractive is they say all you have to do is follow this carefully tapped path, and one for one, you'll be free. Life is much more complex than that. No one person is going to give you the answers. And unless you're challenged to step outside of the system and the consensus reality, which Scientology forced me to do, I never would have doubted my superiors, and I would believe what I'm told. You know what I mean? And see if the guy agrees, that you're texting.
Sorry, 1 second. I was just
Yeah,
playing that. I was just playing on my iPhone as well. So you come out of Scientology at age 33. How did that happen? I mean, I think I've heard you say one day that it hit you one day. It was in a matter of 24 hours. And
this book, dude, and specifically,
that was it.
This was it. And by the way, I'm not in it anymore. So it's kind of like looking at my life from outside. Everything makes sense, the whole journey. When I was living it, everything seemed random. But so I can tell you that with or without this book, I was already starting to subconsciously wake up. You never doubt the cult. It's always your fault. And I was under a kind of mind control, like any Scientologist is, where you simply can't see your predicament. But it was the knowledge that was in that book. It was the knowledge of, now, were you taught coercive control in high school? Were you taught about psychopaths? Were you taught about MK Ultra in high school?
Oh, no.
Were you taught about the government projects? Were you taught about any of this stuff?
No.
Well,
I went to a
here,
Irish Catholic school. I had no idea.
So imagine knowing nothing except for L. Ron Hubbard and learning all about hypnotism, coercive control. He has this thing called the BITE model, by the way, which is brilliant. That stands for behavior, information, thought, and emotion. And he says the way a cult works is how much do they control your behavior? How much do they control information? Remember during this quote unquote pandemic that we just experienced? And right now, how much information control is going on? How much are you being censored from hearing an alternative viewpoint? So thought, how much is your thought being controlled? And he tells you how this happens. Dude, in this one book, which is really simple, like there's books that are much more complex, but this is simple enough where the average person that goes through the schooling system, that listens to the news, that believes everything they're told, would have their mind ripped open by, I did, by learning knowledge that's simply not taught to us. It's simple to understand. It only has power. This mind control only had power over me. L. Ron Hubbard only had power over me because he was using things that I simply wasn't taught. He was using psychology on us, to put it in a word. So once you learn that psychology, which is completely absent from any discussion on the news, any discussion in high school, I had my fucking mind blown by this. And I was like, what's the next book? How much? Like that took me down a rabbit hole that gave me so much information that's out of the official narrative. My first question was, why on earth wasn't I taught any of this? Why aren't we teaching our kids this? Why do you have to get sucked up into a cult, have a friend drop this freaking book off, and discover it the hard way? I'm telling you, bro, if we as a human race in general had access to the knowledge that was in this book and others, we would be living in a different world. I never would have stepped into Scientology, and the way that we are controlled would be impossible. But until you know that, it's a weapon. You know, L. Ron Hubbard was using silent weapons against us. He was an expert hypnotist, I would say a master in the occult, and he knew, like any good self-aware psychopath, how to tell you what you want to hear and how to hook you in and how to be an excellent salesman. If you or I, and most people are not a psychopath, so that already puts out of the realm being able to suss evil on a scale like that. We're not taught any of these tools about how our mind work, which is our natural inheritance. And we're simply at the mercy of people that do know this. And L. Ron Hubbard, because he knew this, was not a brilliant man and that he came up with a new technology to save the world. He was very good at psychologically manipulating people.
Now, can you run us through the day? You said this happened in a day. Could you run us through what happened that day? Can you remember the day it all happened, and can you remember the aftermath?
Yeah, I can remember exactly. I mean, well, it's hard. I remember it like a photographic memory. What happened is it gave me a beyond a heart attack. I didn't actually have a heart attack, but let me just say that I went from totally trusting Hubbard, learning all the policies about what you do to somebody that doubts Scientology or that goes against Scientology, which are really harsh, but I was never going to leave Scientology. I was never going to be what they call a suppressive person. That's someone who either doubts Scientology, has a whole bunch of definitions, which is a whole nother part of it. But let me keep it simple. In a single moment, I went from understanding that L. Ron Hubbard was a liar. Oh my God. Because by the way, he doesn't talk about Scientology until the end of this book. This is an updated version. This is the exact one I got, so it's changed around. But he didn't mention Scientology till the end. If he had mentioned that Scientology was a cult at the beginning, I would have shut the book. I wasn't going to listen any further, nor would any Scientologist. But because he used the moon cult, the Moonies, which he grew up in, or which he was a part of, he was able to explain how all these other cults, which weren't Scientology, were doing the same thing that Scientology was. So when he was explaining the moon cult, I was like, that's what Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard's doing. So I knew Hubbard was a liar within 20 minutes. And I also knew that I was in deep shit. I was in deep danger because instantly there's no way I'm going back to Scientology. My faith broke instantly. I wasn't going to do independent Scientology. I wasn't going to practice this technology outside of the church for a couple years, which a lot of people do. I wasn't going to go the methadone route. I was out of Scientology in 20 minutes and my life was in danger because I'm like, I need to wake up my parents, but they're going to come after me. You don't speak out about Scientology, dude. And you don't do all the things that I did subsequently. But I had a years-long battle trying to both be afraid of my parents because I would challenge them on Scientology, trying to figure out a way to speak to them. Everything I did just brought more challenge in my life, but I wasn't going to be quiet. So I was just in a conundrum, dude, both trying to figure out what happened to me while simultaneously trying to pass that information on to my parents and other people that were trapped. But you lose that ability as soon as you suss the con and you speak out because they wouldn't, my parents, I had one opportunity, which I talked about in the videos, to talk to him, and that's the last time I saw him. But it's almost impossible to have a rational discussion. Hey, mother and father, I just discovered we're in a cult. We're in danger. Could I, as my mother and father, would you please listen to me where I just explain? It's not like that. As soon as we hear the word Doug is no longer into Scientology, my parents are like,
Could you actually tell us that story? That was an amazing story.
Yeah, it took me a while to kind of get them, not under false pretenses, but I couldn't tell them, look, I want to talk to you about Scientology and get you out of this evil cult. Somehow or another, I managed to get a meeting with them where we were going to discuss that, but I made it non-threatening. So we met at a halfway meeting point. I still live in Los Angeles, but at the time, this would have been, oh Christ, when would this have been? I don't know. I got out in January 2008. So this would have been a few years after that when I made an attempt. It's on the video if people want to see it, called, I don't know what the hell it's called. It's one of the episodes. Anyways, I get the
I'll
meeting
link
with
it.
him. Okay, thanks, man. I get the meeting with him and I laid out some of the stuff that was in this book, the bite model, the fact that Hubbard was into the occult. He was a Satanist. He was into mind control. I went spewed to him. I would do a totally different presentation today because I was just learning. But I thought I did a really good presentation. Well, I must have sounded like a complete nutter to my parents because I could put myself in their shoes.
Yeah.
And the way I described it is like this. In Scientology, they have a thing called, Hubbard says, reality is only, there is no such thing as reality. It's whatever is agreed upon. So in Scientology, we had a fake agreed upon reality that was all based around Hubbard's sci-fi ideas under the guise of a science. So everybody believes and holds together this completely fake reality. So nobody's lying to each other. We believe in it. So when I tell my parents that he's a hypnotist, he's involved in the occult with Jack Parsons and all this, understand that Scientologists, that's way, way outside of their agreed upon reality. So when I hit him with all this conspiracy stuff, which actually is true,
Yeah.
I already knew what that was going to sound like to him, but I was so enthusiastic and an amateur about trying to wake someone up that the way it registered in their world is funny, dude, to just remember. Because to this day, they must think I'm absolutely out of my mind because I hit him with every fact that you have to slowly lead an a Scientologist into. So, bro, after I laid out all these facts, they very kindly listened to me. And like I said, we're not all lying to each other. Everybody believes in it. What they said is, what you're saying is impossible, Doug. We love you. Please, please listen to what you're saying. You're saying that now we're successful, right? I was living in my car at the time. My life had to break down before I could rebuild from the scratch a new life. So I was going through a process at the time that was totally natural coming out of a cult, but I thought I was dying. I went homeless. The acting career faded away. My whole life was about to change. But at the time, I was living in my car and I could barely get food or whatever. So I'm looking like what they call in Scientology a downstat, meaning, dude, what you're saying, son, is that you're homeless, you look disheveled, you're spouting the craziest shit we've ever heard. And you're saying that only you have figured out this grand conspiracy that's going on with Scientology, and your parents who are successful, John Travolta and Tom Cruise, who you looked up to, remember, you wanted to be an actor because they inspired you. You're going against the greatest thing per the millions of success stories that you wrote about Scientology. You're saying there's a grand conspiracy. Scientology all of a sudden didn't help you, even though it gave you your acting career. You're living out of your car and you're spouting the craziest shit we've ever heard. We're not all in on a conspiracy, Doug. We're not all lying to each other. You know that this is the right thing. You're not this one guy that just figured out that we're, this conspiracy and we're all lying to each other. So do you understand, like, that from their viewpoint, I was like this one, homeless guy spouting crazy shit, trying to tell them they're in danger. And from their agreed upon fake reality that they're living in, which I was a part of, it sounds impossible. So that was it, dude. They wished me luck and they just basically got up and left. And I haven't seen them in person since that moment. And I have taken a crack at like emailing them, not lately, but in the past, I used to email them, pieces of the bite model here and there. I learned the hard way that my parents are never going to leave it. It's not my job to save them or anybody, but it's not uncommon to initially want to do that. And it's their choice, rather. They're going to be in for the rest of their life. That's another story, as to explain that. But I finally just realized, look, I got to live my life. They got to live their life. I always would, hope they'd snap out of it or whatever, but it's just, they're too invested. And to take the side of me and to honestly take in what I was saying that day would be to threaten their reality and everything they built up through Scientology and all the nasty things that they did to me and the rest of the family in favor of Scientology. They would have to introspect and look at what they did by going to sleep for 30 or 40 years. That would be unconfrontable. And they're like in their late 70s, early 80s, probably, dude. So I was prepared for this. I woke up in my early 30s. I could barely handle it myself, but I could take it. You know, I was an actor. I could take the emotional trauma. I had a place to act out so I wouldn't kill myself. And I was in my, early 30s. So I barely could take it without wanting to kill myself. So if my parents were to wake up in their early 80s or whatever, dude, and come to terms with what they did to me by shutting me down for the last 10 years, not listening, all the trauma, all the adventures I've been through that were really bad, they would have to actually confront that. And there's no way in hell they would be able to do that without their brain shattering. Plus, you add on to the fact that they themselves have been conned for about the last 40 years, that my dad getting up to the top of the bridge was all bogus. All the sacrifices, we had other family members trying to warn my family about Scientology. His brother, who gave him the money, was simultaneously, I talked to him afterwards after I got out of the cult. And he said, yeah, I've always regretted giving your dad that money that day. I mean, he would have gotten into it anyways and figured out another way. But my whole family knew what we were involved in, but they were scared to talk about it for the very reasons that I just described. Like, to come to terms with what I did as a Scientologist and my parents do is a whole, I mean, if you really come to terms with it, not like a lot of the ex-Scientologists that leave Scientology, but maybe they just got kicked out or whatever. And they're still the same assholes, that they were inside. They're just not in the cult anymore.
Just
For me,
butt hurt.
Butt hurt, as opposed to, hey man, I was really a piece of shit while I was in this cult. I need to become a better person. And that's, if someone that should be the revelation if you come out of a cult. And if my parents were to experience that pain, dude, it would kill them.
There was somebody that said, I think it was Levin. What's his first name again?
Aaron Smith Levin.
Aaron Smith Levin said that he had no problem with the beliefs of Scientology. He had the beliefs of, or he had a problem with how they went about it. And I'm like, that doesn't really cover it.
Yeah, he also said the main reason he's doing his YouTube channel is to get back at David Miscavage, to piss him off as much as possible. I don't have hate in my heart. I'm not after Miscavige or anybody. It caused me to introspect so badly that the first thing a Scientologist, again, I don't want to tell anybody what to do. I thought all of us exes were on the same page and we're going through this process too. But to me, the first thing that needs to happen is you need to take responsibility for who you were. Yes, we were manipulated. Yes, we were victims, but it's a two-way flow too. We can't just blame everything on everybody. We took part in that. So I certainly felt compelled to become a much better person and to be humbled and to make up for the damage, not to get back at Miscavige, not to get back at my parents. Dude, I wanted to for the longest time. I think that's part of the healing process. I had to express the anger. I called up my parents angry, sad. I threatened their life, dude, and they had to get a restraining order on me. I mean, this is serious business, but I had to get that out. And even when that was happening, I recognized there's no way out. I can't suppress this. And I had an acting class too, so I didn't have to kill my parents. I could act it out. But I see these ex-Scientologists, they haven't even started that process for the most part. These are ex-Sea Org members. These are the people that did the worst shit, dude. These are the kind of people that were assholes when I was a public member. And they didn't do Scientology. They administered it. These are the geeks we were talking about, the ones that got into it because it gave them a sense of power. I didn't want a sense of power, dude. I felt like a piece of shit when I came out of this. And it took me 10 years looking in the mirror and not being that. So yeah, I'm not looking to get back at anybody. My parents have every right to be a Scientologist. And as I said in a previous interview, we take the consequences of the choices we make. So I don't need to play God. Every day my parents pay the price of the choice that they make to stay in there, but it's their life and they have every right to do that. I don't want to get back at them or Miscavige, or anybody, dude. If you have any, but I just want to say real quick, if you have any kind of hate in your heart, or you're trying to get back and you still feel, because they crush us and it's okay to be mad at them for a while, but sooner or later, I think part of that recovery process, which we were kind of talking about, is to get to an even keel and to be effective about helping other people. If that's what you want to do. That's what I want to do. And not trying to get back at these people. Because dude, for the most part, we're victims. We have no idea what happened to us. And we were all in the same position that these other people were,
So
we're not better than them.
when you say public member, you're a member of the public that goes to Scientology classes. You're not living in their dorms and stuff and working for them and shit like that.
Correct.
So you're going there every day and like living in your own apartment.
Right. I lived right across the street from Celebrity Center. I'll give you an example. So when I moved out to Hollywood to begin the acting career, and I got sucked back to the mission for a while to do a lighter version of what Aaron and these other people were in. I signed the contract, but not the billion-year contract. So I didn't become a total tyrant. I couldn't even be the tyrant that they wanted me to be for 2.5 weeks. So I left and went back to being a public member. But I live right across the street from Celebrity Center in Los Angeles. And for the listener, Celebrity Center, you don't have to be a celebrity to go there. But L. Ron Hubbard tried to hook celebrities, and they have celebrity centers all over the world. That's where you go if you're an artist, or as specifically here in Los Angeles, the actors, producers, writers, screenwriters, etc., that are also Scientologists. That's where we all go and hang out and get brainwashed. So I live right across the street there. Every day I would go. If I had the day off and I didn't have to work, I'd go from 9 a.m. to, I believe it was either 9 or 10 p.m. I go full time, and you have to do 40 hours a week when you're on auditing, or that's minimum. And they have you lay out how you're going to schedule that 40 hours a week. So, dude, I was working multiple jobs, working more than full time. And then I had to put in the minimum of 40 hours a week, another full time, either doing choruses or auditing. And that's expected of every Scientologist at a certain point. So every day, bro, when I couldn't make it, you have to make up hours. And when I wasn't there, I was listening to L. Ron Hubbard lectures when I was at the gym, on set doing background work. And then when I started, actually getting real jobs, I would just go into the corner and listen to Hubbard. It was full on 24/7.
So I think it was Chris Shelton. He's another ex-Scientology member.
Mm-hmm.
He was interviewed on Andrew Gold, and he said that Hubbard he died before the internet, and he didn't have any response to what the internet would entail.
Mm-hmm.
And the internet,
that's a good point.
Ever since, it has been declining. And then you had the documentaries, and you had the protests by Anonymous and stuff, and it's been declining ever since. Do you see a kind of a situation where Scientology will be whittled down to a few thousand people, and they'll retreat to a point where they become threatened enough? Hold on, let me back it up a bit.
Sure.
One thing I haven't, with many cults, one thing I haven't come across in Scientology is the sexual abuse part. I haven't heard much about that.
There's plenty of that.
There is?
Yes. It just has yet to either. That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because that happens a lot, but that hasn't been covered because of the very censorship we're talking about. As soon as you throw the P word out, you're not going to get that on too much on Leah Remini's show when she's talking about Scientology, although she squeezed a little bit of that in there. And Leah would probably have more. Leah Remini, by the way, did a television show that kind of put Scientology on the map as to how evil they are. Most people thought up until that point. This came out in 2017, and it's called Leah Remini, Scientology in the Aftermath. And she's a celebrity that had been in and grown up in it her whole life, and then came out, with kind of balls of steel. And, she's probably helping out to, why we have Danny Masterson on trial, and why such a spotlight's being shined on them or whatever. Because, I'm sorry, I fucking forgot the question.
Who's Danny Masterson? Let's cover that first.
Sure. Danny, by the way, for people that don't know, he is on, he's up for rape. He's on allegations. I have to be careful the way I word this. Allegations of rape with 3 different women. He has a much bigger track record of other people that wanted to come forward, but there's only 3 of them that are in this trial. And I ran with that whole crew, by the way. His stepbrother and stepsister were in my acting class. We could spend 2 hours just on Masterson.
His sister is on
The Walking Dead.
Walking Dead. She's that chick with the black hair.
I didn't even watch it, so I don't fucking pay attention. But yeah, I know she's on The Walking Dead.
Yeah, Danny was in that 70s show, and there's been allegations against him of violent sexual assault.
Yes, exactly. Now he's on trial right now. The trial started. They're in jury selection mode, and it's going to go on for a few weeks to find out, if he's guilty or not. We were hoping that Scientology might be put in the spotlight more, and it's not going to be taken up too much. Again, if you want to, we can do a 2-hour show in the future just on Masterson, because I really wanted to cover that. I ran with that crew, and I could talk forever about that, but we don't want to spend the whole thing on that. You just asked about it cursorily, right? So just to give the audience ideas, up on rape allegations right now. He, in my opinion, he's a complete psychopath. I know you can't say guilty before proven innocent. So he, like everybody, needs and deserves a fair trial. But I know enough about that case where I have my own opinion, let's say. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, bro, let me just say this about this whole thing. I think that can I take a guess on that? What's going to happen? I think he's going to pay some penalty, but I think it's going to be weak. And Scientology is not going to be put on trial because they're not. And they're only being used to show why the girls were gaslit and took so long to report it, because it happened to them in 2001 and 2003. And they didn't report it till many years later. One of the girls did report it right away, but there's a whole gaslighting of, if you go to you never report those things to police or outside authorities. So it took the girls a while to get away from Scientology. They're no longer Scientologists, to wake up from that mind control, to even understand that they were raped, that something happened to them. So finally they go and report around 2016, 2017. Leah exposed, did a whole episode on Masterson on, Scientology in the aftermath that was hard for them to get on air. And I know that frustrated them. And finally we have him in court. But I think he's just going to kind of, get off maybe one count, and he'll do 10 years, but then get out in 3. And there's not going to be any fucking justice. And the reason I say that, I hope I'm wrong, but specifically whenever you're dealing with Scientology, they're so far ahead of the curve on how to manipulate the justice system, on how to throw people into bogus arbitration. They're protected by the tax exempt status, which allows them an incredible leeway of these psychopathic people and lawyers working behind the scenes. There's no Scientology lawyers, that are working for Danny. He has a top in the business in LA, but normally they'd have Scientology lawyers that would go in there and run circles around the judge. So whenever you deal with Scientology, you can expect a slap on the wrist, Scientology never being held to account, which is why this stuff started in the first place. If I'm not justifying Danny or anybody, but if he was smart, he'd throw Scientology under the bus and save his own ass. Because without Scientology, there's not sociopaths that are going to be created that would cause people to do those things. Again, I'm not excusing Danny. I think he's probably, already. Do we still got sound here? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to throw him under the bus, though, by the signs of it.
It's either or. It's who's gonna call chicken first, dude. It's like, it's fascinating to guess about what's going to happen, because they don't give a fuck about him. They care about this crowd. I mean, that guy's locked in with many family members that give him lots of money, and he's just a freaking C-level actor, maybe B-level. They don't give a fuck about him. It would be different with Tom Cruise, but they're not protecting him because they wouldn't throw him under the bus. They just have other things to consider about how the clique that he runs with. If they boot out Danny, or they do anything suspect with him, he's got all of his kids, his Carol Masterson, his mother was my acting manager for a while. She's got a boatload of money, and he's hooked in with this whole Scientology. It's like the brat pack of Scientologist Hollywood people. If Danny goes, they're going to lose. They have the potential to lose a lot of other money-making people and celebrities, people in the business. A whole bunch of people might go with them. So that's the only reason they're freaking not throwing him under the bus as of yet.
There's so many questions. I mean, there's so many avenues to go down here. I don't know what direction to go to next.
I know what you mean.
I mean, should we even go into should we even go back in history into L. Ron Hubbard's history and his connections with the occult and the Process Church and Jim Jones and Charles Manson discovered Scientology in prison, and they were like, he's reformed because he found religion.
Jesus.
So much stuff.
First of all, how long have we been going? I have no time. Okay, so we've been going an hour.
1 hour.
Okay, Do you want to do, because dude, that's why I have all those videos up there and the
Right.
documentaries and trying to point people in the direction. I do have a million books sitting next to me. We can either save that for the next time, or we can, if what I'm saying is you're asking a huge question,
I
dude.
know, I know I am.
And I have to
It's
connect a lot of dots. Do you want to do that, or do you want to stick with? Do you want to save that for part 2 or whatever? We
yeah,
could do, if you want to do that, bro. I could actually prepare and do some homework, and
yeah,
we
I
could
think we
go
should.
step by step, and because this has to be laid out in a linear way. Otherwise, I'm going to sound like an idiot, and I don't want. If we're going to really talk about that, I want to get it across to people in a way they can understand it without going off onto a million tangents, like I have a tendency to do when we talk about that
Yeah,
stuff, because there's a lot of dots that connect. So we could do like a 2-hour show just on that if you want
yeah.
to.
Let's
But
do that. Let's save that
I'd
because
love to
that
do
is
that too, by the way, because I'd love to break that down where we could just start from the beginning. We could, I'm not under any time restraints, and we could just go
right.
2 hours, and I'll break it all down for you, what I've learned so far.
Yeah, let's keep that. And
Can I tell your listeners real quick though, just so we don't sound like we're rebuffing them or anything? There is a decent amount of knowledge on the channel if people want to, kind of get up to speed on that. You said you were deep diving on it lately, right? And
yeah.
so, people can go over there in the meantime, but I'm not trying to impose myself on your podcast
Oh no,
again,
no,
bro, but
no.
I'd
Link
love
it.
to I'd love to talk about this with you.
Dazed but not confused. Check his channel out. There's a lot of stuff on there.
And then if you want, like I said, brother, I'd love to just spend where we have no time pressure to absolutely deep dive into this with you, you know?
Let's do that, but let's not end it yet. I
No,
want to hear
no,
some.
no, no.
I want to hear some listeners'
Sure, dude.
questions. If anybody has any questions, put them on like block. My eyesight's terrible. I'm getting so old. Um,
That's
anybody has any questions for Doug, please ask them right now. And
Oh, I didn't even know there was people over here. I just hit comments. I'll go through these and see, or
there's
you
only
can.
8. There's usually like 30. What the hell?
Hey, if we
People
do
must
this
forget me.
again, bro, we can link the channels or whatever, and I can get some of my listeners to cruise over here, and we could have them ask questions, especially when we deep dive into the MK Ultra cult connections and all that shit, because that will probably have some questions. But let's see.
MK Ultra. We got Charles Manson. We got Jim Jones. We got the Process Church, which was started by Scientologists. Um, well, I've been, like I said, I've been doing a deep dive on your show, and you've got a lot of good stuff on your channel that should be gone through. It all connects. That's what I like about your show. It's all linked, and that's how you get the full picture of the whole Scientology story is through your channel more than anybody else's. I mean, I'm not taking away from these other Scientologists that have come out, but they kind of skim the surface and they just talk about, yeah, Scientology sucks, and
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
escaped it, full stop. But
And all the
you
salacious bullshit about, like, I have a video, by the way, up on Danny Masterson that breaks down everything in about 25 minutes. And the only thing that's missing is the latest updates, which I'll do, either during the trial or after. I could speak on that for hours, but it's like, I'm not trying to jump on the latest trend. Do what the channel's about. Thanks for saying that, man, because that's what I've been trying to do. Like, and where I thought the ex-Scientologists, I thought we were going to save the world, and they were seeing the bigger picture too. And they were making the connections, but it's just all about views and like just the latest bullshit topic. What my channel's for is no Scientologists are going to watch it, but when they get out, they'll have a one-stop shop to go where they can watch the series, the interviews, and I'm trying to connect the dots, refer people back. It's where they can, because we need help, bro, understanding that we are under hypnosis. What the hell's that? And there's a whole bunch of things that we as ex-Scientologists coming out won't know about. So here they can skip the salacious bullshit and they can deprogram video by video. So I've been trying to lay it out, this dot connecting thing, in a linear way so that the average person can understand a lot of kind of complex stuff. And I didn't know, I don't claim to be a guru, dude. I'm not an expert. I'm always learning new shit every day. But I did hit a certain point where if you connect enough dots, I think you can fully remove your brain from Scientology, which again, these people help out a lot and I'm not trying to bag on them. But I look at most of those X's, which are Sea Org members with big voices. They sound to me just like Sea Org members that are still in Scientology.
Hmm.
And that's, again, we could do a 2-hour topic on just that.
Yeah,
We got
and
to we
if
got to pick something next time, man.
I
I
know,
think we laid out the groundwork, for like the
yeah,
whole story. We covered a lot of stuff, man.
It's so deep. And if you want to go and watch some documentaries, go to um what's his name? I always forget his name. John Sweeney's 2-part documentary on Scientology.
Check out
Um,
Going Clear, which is an
Going Clear.
HBO. Check out Louis Theroux's movie called My Scientology Movie. There's a million
Man,
of them.
that's so funny. Louis Theroux. Like,
It's very funny.
I think I saw. I don't know if it was you or somebody else pointed it out that Scientology had got wise to his stick, and he was trying to draw them out, but they wouldn't play ball,
Yeah, yeah.
and he had to kind of act out how Scientologists
Yeah.
would react in certain situations.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a letdown for me because I thought, because Louis Theroux is one of my heroes.
And he can get access to anybody, dude, but he
Yeah,
couldn't really get into Scientology.
he couldn't, and
He couldn't, dude.
that's one of I'm like, come on, Louis, you can do this, but
Yeah, yeah.
he fell short in that
Mhm.
one.
He still
You
did a
know,
good job, though. I mean,
yeah, he did. He's always entertaining. He always asks a
definitely.
question, like with those alt-right people. He's like, so you did that Hitler salute, but you did it twice. And then he stops talking and he
That's
just
funny.
stares at them.
Yeah, he even that's his famous shtick, right? To drop a bomb or say something and then just sit there and stare at him. Remember I don't know if you remember My Scientology movie, but the main guy in that was a guy named Marty Rathbun, who was
Yeah,
he was a top whistleblower at the time, but he since turned, and we don't know if he took a payout or whatever, but he put out these pro Scientology videos since then. Who the hell knows what happened with that
oh,
guy?
he did.
Made it. Oh yeah, bro. There's a whole we could do 2 hours on Marty Rathbun's story. This is the problem talking about this subject, by the way, bro, because like there's so many different elements to it. The Marty Rathbun story has a whole
Oh, I'll dig
fascinating
into that.
history behind it. Definitely check that out. But he was the main guy in Louis Theroux's movie, and he would often get to him under his skin by doing the same thing. He'd ask Marty something, he'd just sit there and stare at him. And you could just see, Marty Rathbun like losing his shit. He almost walked off on the movie, and they had a lot of problems. He didn't like Louis' style, of getting under his skin, bro.
I love his style. So somebody has a question here. There's a
There's
big center out here near Helmet's Back Roads. What is that?
Hemet. Yeah, he's talking.
Hemet.
Be Kind's talking about the Gold Base, which is, by the way, I almost went out to that. That's a place in Hemet, California, which is guarded with all sorts of security. They have out-facing spikes, these huge spikes, and in-facing spikes, so the members can't escape because people are always
Jeez.
trying to escape there. And when they do, they send out the lights and the drills and the dogs, and they have a whole way to
North
track people
Korea.
down. Oh, it's exactly that. If people want to, it's exactly that. And they also make it look. This is where they took Tom Cruise out to try to, convince his latest wife to, it's beautiful. In other words, it's like these people are all imprisoned and there's, cameras everywhere, but it's also gorgeous. Scientology has some of the most expensive, beautiful property everywhere. And Gold
Yeah.
Base is also where all the actors go to shoot their technical films. So I was going through their checkout to go out to Gold Base. Super secure, bro. You have to go through a security check if you're a Scientologist to be approved to go out there. This is where the most hardcore Sea Org members and the most dedicated in Scientology work and are enslaved at. And this is also where they had the hole, which is where Mike Rinder talks about being put into a prison with all the other top Sea Org members when David Miscavige imprisoned them for a few years. There's a whole bunch of North Korea shit going on in that place in particular, which that person was commenting about.
So, Ultra says, is that where Shelly Miscavige is?
No, Shelly Miscavige is alleged, and I think it's pretty accurate, to be at CST, which stands for Church of Spiritual Technology in San Bernardino. Scientology, one of the way it hornswoggles government officials and keeps it from being shut down is they have an organizational structure that makes it almost impossible to nail down the entity as one corporation. So part of that wing is a special secretive wing of their organizational structure called CST, or Church of Spiritual Technology, that holds the trademarks for all of Scientology. This is something that Scientologists don't know anything about. You only learn this coming out. And apparently she's been holed up there for about 15 years, kept out, disappeared and kept out. She's rumored to be alive, even though no one spotted her in recent years. But David Miscavige got rid of her a long time ago. And she's probably in a being kept malnourished, which is part of the mind control, which most Sea Org members are kept really busy and malnourished so they can't think. She's definitely not in good condition. She's probably, who knows what state of mind she is, but she's simply out there on that base and being kept away from any scrutiny. And by the way, the fact that the Leah Remini tried to get, officials to go in there and do something about that, and they just came back and said, yeah, we found her and that's it. That's all we're going to do. But that causes a lot of people to go, gee, why aren't the authorities doing something about a missing person for 15 freaking years or however long it's been? Shouldn't we check up on her? We could also do another hour show on how Scientology has the LAPD. In fact, I'm doing a video right now in their pocket and how they're able to buy off government officials and people in the police department to make sure that they don't look too deeply into Scientology.
They still have the power, huh?
They do. I mean, they're still there, aren't they?
Yeah.
By the way, one of the major things that needs to be done, I think this will actually happen because some shady politician's going to want to get their glory. It's trending right now to hate Scientology. There's a mayor race going on right now with Karen Bass out here in Los Angeles and some other dude, where they're basically trying to outdo each other on how bad Scientology is. Because Karen Bass was shilling for Scientology in 2010 at their events, and she since tried to retract. In other words, there's a mayor race going on right now where they're trying to outdo each other on how much they dislike Scientology. It has then you got Danny Masterson. So there's right now in particular, Scientology's seen very negatively. So some sleazy politician is going to see that as their ticket. If I finally take on Scientology, if I finally make it my priority, not because I care, but because I want to win votes, to remove Scientology's tax exempt status and look into that again, that'll win them in their race. So sooner or later, maybe sooner rather than later, I do think their tax exempt status is going to get taken away. It's going to be challenged finally. But
if there's a sexual misconduct thing too, that'll do it.
Yes, that should have already done it. But I think, and human trafficking and a whole bunch of other things, they could get them on. But I think what they're going to go for, I don't know. It won't be something like that they should get him on. It'll be some kind of criminal activities that a little bit light. It's so complex. What I could say a whole bunch on just what you just said, but I think that it will be on something other than the human trafficking, or I think it'll be some kind of criminal activity. They'll be easy to prosecute, even though they have a dozen or so things that should have already shut them down a long time ago. Also, one other thing on that, it's not enough just to remove their tax exempt status. And we're back to kind of the purpose why I want to start the freaking channel. Unless we teach these people what happened to them and we deprogram and we give them the tools about how their minds work and stuff so they can heal, you could take Scientology's tax exempt status away. You could take all their money away, and they will go form another version of Scientology over and over and over again. Scientology's, has a lot of attention on it, but it's no different than it's a little bit different, but not much than what the Jehovah's Witnesses are going through. The Mormons will tell you similar stories. There's a whole litany of cults that have been going on all throughout back into ancient times, where we can keep challenging them on one level, and we should, to get rid of their tax exempt status, handle the immediate problems. That should have been removed a long time ago. But the big picture is these people need to be healed, man. If you would have come along and take Scientology's tax exempt status away when I was in it, you know what the reaction is? It just harms the people, man. You're taking away their God-given right to believe in whatever they want to believe and to, follow what they think is right. They aren't trying to be mean. They don't know that they're under mind control. They believe like I did and so you're not going to take away that fervor and that installed mind control program simply by removing their tax exempt status. You're going to hurt them. You're going to actually leave them out to dry where they can't practice their technology. And they do have the right to practice whatever they want, man. They just don't have the right to do all of the mafia criminal, illegal things that they also get up to by being a part of that church. That to me is like the real solving of not just Scientology, but how can we help people recover from all the other cults and abuses? Scientology gets too much of a spotlight. It's just one microcosm of a bigger macrocosm, you know.
And that's what we're going to talk about in our next podcast when you come back.
Awesome.
And we're going to include, somebody has a question here. Cindy has a Christian Life Center. Is it Christian Science?
It doesn't. Can you, Cindy, if that is Christian Science, could you let us know? I haven't heard of Christian Life Center, but I don't doubt your word on it that it's a cult. You know, they have a bunch of ones like this that, Cindy, is that a big one or is it a small cult? They have thousands and thousands of smaller cults. I just saw one yesterday in New Zealand that was 500 people strong, and it was abusing people in exactly the same way with the exact same playbook as Scientology and all these other cults use. One thing on that real quick too, by the way, it's not that hard to do what we were talking about to teach people about this, because all the psychopaths and all the cults are using the exact same playbook. Again, please get books like this and stuff, because once you learn about one cult experience, your eyes can open up, and it really is the same playbook, the same tools, and the same psychology being used over and over. So this Christian Life Center would have very similar things. If it's a cult, you know, I don't know anything about it, but I trust this gal knows what she's talking about. I don't know, but it's big. Okay. And Cindy, you would know, right? So they would be using the same crap almost exactly that Scientology and all these other cults using. It's not unique, you know. I'm gonna look that up, by the way, Cindy. Thanks for that, because I'm always interested in ones I haven't heard of.
One thing I always had a question about was, did Hubbard, I kind of find him like kind of an evil genius, but do you think that he came to this? Well, he started with Dianetics and then transformed to the Church of Scientology. Did he have all of these? I'm not too familiar with all of the methods that he used, but did he have all of this prepared, or did Scientology make it up as it went along?
That's a great question. He really did make it up as he went along. That's a huge part of it. But this is why we'll deep dive into this in the 2-hour talk next time, because we can get into some interesting stuff as to, it wasn't totally off the cuff. There's stuff he learned in the military. There's stuff he learned with Project MK Ultra. Again, he was an expert hypnotist, and he was very involved in the occult. Again, too long to get into, but no, he came in with some knowledge of how to psychologically manipulate people. Since he was a kid, he was a devious person. He's what you call a sociopath, and he was an evil genius. So you add those elements together and the help that he had in getting his cult started, which isn't known about too much, but nonetheless, it's not like he just pulled us out of whole cloth. It still exists, and everybody tried to take it down, but they couldn't. You know, he would sell his soul to the highest bidder. So he worked with a lot of people, which we'll talk about next time. But for the most part, once he had the occult, the hypnotism, first of all, Crowley's a huge part, because that was the key that he really thought. And that's what Scientology is completely based around. And there's something to say about that. It's not just
that shocked me. That shocked me, that part.
Really?
I really want to talk about that. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
I know that they crossed paths, but I didn't know that they were.
Oh, he didn't know Crowley, but he claimed that he was very good. But he was into him, and even Crowleyites will say, look, dude, Hubbard didn't know what he was talking about. Fine, man. But doesn't mean Crowley was a maniac too. I don't give a fuck what people say. That was not a good guy. But yeah, Hubbard, like everything, he did a watered down version of Crowley, but it didn't mean that it was not effective. It just might not have been as effective and as quote unquote well laid out as Crowley. But to answer your question, he had such a good imagination, and he was a science fiction writer. And almost all of his lectures, he would get jacked up on speed. He'd read a text from Crowley, particularly on a course called the Philadelphia Doctorate Course. When he first started riffing off these lectures and having people come to listen, he would get jacked up on speed. He was massively into Crowley at the time, would fill his subconscious with ideas, and then go out there on the stage and just start riffing. I have a video on my channel, if people are interested, called the Secret OT3 Lecture, where It's a confidential lecture that wasn't supposed to come out, but there he is rambling about the Xenu story, the ultra secret in Scientology, which is revealed on OT3. That's the level I got to before I cracked and started to wake up. But you can hear him making it up as he goes along. You can hear the science fiction mixed with true stuff, mixed with the occult, mixed with pieces of cheese that actually do ping on some certain truths, but are so delusional at the same time. He's riffing on the spot like a jazz musician. And you can tell in most of his lectures, he's completely making it up, dude. He's an interesting guy, man, in terms of being able to pull shit out of his ass on the spot and make it sound convincing. But also listening to him now, he sounds like an idiot to me. And editing these things, it drives me crazy listening to him. So I hope people understand we're under a literal spell. He seemed a very different person. He seemed a beautiful man, even though he's ugly. I didn't see the rotting teeth. I didn't hear the annoying voice. When we were under hypnosis, everything about him was different. I loved listening to him in the cult. I can barely take it nowadays. I saw him differently and he sounded differently to us. Because people go, how can you even listen to this jackass? Why wouldn't you leave when you put on the first tape lecture? So I try to lay out the trap and let people know that our critical thinking is being shut down on that communication course. We're being put under hypnosis in the auditing. We're not thinking clearly. We're not hearing and seeing the things that you guys can obviously see because you're not under a fucking spell. You're outside of it and you can see it. Because, dude, it looks so stupid. And sometimes I feel like an idiot even talking about it. But since I lived it, I'm not a dumbass, I'm not the brightest person, but I'm not stupid like a lot of us aren't. I just understand that there's psychological mechanisms that we're back to the point we talked about earlier. We're not taught about it. So if you don't know there's weapons being used against you that are invisible, anybody could fall into something like Scientology. If you're vulnerable, if they get you at the right point, or if you learn some basic or maybe even more advanced psychology, a hypnotist wouldn't be susceptible to Scientology because they would see exactly what's going on. So, some people would be protected, but unless you made it your profession or you deep dive into some psychology and some hypnosis and the occult, if you didn't know any of these things, which most people don't, anybody, dumb or bright, anybody could fall for this. It only looks stupid when you can see it from the outside,
Well, all Tree says here, are members so brainwashed that they would willingly give themselves sexually to the higher ranking actors?
Not really. I don't know exactly what that means. It's not like you're...
It's not Charles Manson.
Let me think on this. Are members so brainwashed that they will willingly give themselves sexually to the higher ranking actors? Well, first of all, they're not going to get anywhere near the higher ranking actors because everything in Scientology is compartmentalized and they treat actors not only differently and they're handled differently, but they have a special floor for them. They have a special place for them to park. And they're eventually, when they become famous enough, this is right where I got, by the way, before I woke up, is they have something called the president's office, which was run by a guy named Dave Pettit, who's the president of Celebrity Center. This is where they invite you in when you finally break in. Either maybe you become a series regular on a television show, maybe you are getting hot in the movies or whatever. You then get invited to their Celebrity Center where they're not going to mingle with people that are going to give themselves sexually. The members aren't forced to go sleep with the big actors because they're completely separated, even though we're all on the same page. And like I said, we're all in that fake agreed upon reality. It's a secret society and that everything is kept compartmentalized. So what one person knows up here, everybody else is oblivious to down here. And then also what that person knows up there, they don't know a whole bunch. Nobody gets the big picture of Scientology unless you're out of it. You can't be a Scientologist even at the top because you're super brainwashed in order to get to the top. People know, the Scientologists know less about Scientology, even if they've been in for 30 years, than you who can go on the internet and me know far more about it than any ranking Scientologist, simply because when we're in that bubble, there's so many different levels and different truths that you learn as you go up the bridge. And then there's their intelligence divisions, which Mike Rinder worked at and destroyed people's lives for 2.5 decades. And even he would have been kept compartmentalized from other things. So it's not like this person says, everybody's kept to their own level, and no more and no less. And we're never, ever given the ability to connect the dots in Scientology. That's what keeps us in there so long. There's so much to learn. There's so many levels to go up. The truth constantly changes as you go up the bridge. And another part of the mind control is he created so many books, so many buildings. I was just talking about this with an ex-Scientologist today. Part of what Hubbard did is it's so complex and it seems so technical. There's so much to learn. You're probably going to spend 20 or 30 years in there before you finally realize that you're being led into nowhere. You're always told the next level is going to fix it. And because everything's kept secret and compartmentalized, there's plenty to keep you busy for a lifetime. And still not even Hubbard created more books, more courses, and more material than you could actually do in a lifetime. It's like this huge maze,
Yeah, he was a genius. We're going to pick this up on the next episode.
Awesome. I can't wait, dude.
We've got to do another one because we didn't even touch on these other guys that we were mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and if you want, bro, just tell me what you want to talk about. We could cover whatever you want to do. The MK, we can and the mind control crap, we can go into the connections. We could talk about Danny Masterson, whatever you want to do, and then let me know and I'll do my homework and make sure that I come with my notes in my head so we can go in a linear fashion, because I know we scattered all over the place on this one, but I think we laid a good groundwork on who the hell am I? How does someone get into Scientology? And what are some of the basics of it, right? Do you think we covered some of that?
I think we covered the basics. Yeah, we covered your story, and we touched on some of the other stuff. I think people got the message. And
is anybody in there in the chat confused, questions, things that they wish they would have touched on? If you wouldn't mind, maybe leave a comment in Cornell's video when this is posted and let us know what the hell you might want to listen to, or what they might want to know about, because I never know. As a part of my life, I lived it, so I know what it's like, but people ask the most interesting questions and things I never thought of. They heal me and get me thinking. So whatever that, maybe if people are interested in subjects, Cornell, we could take the top response and then create a podcast around that.
Yeah.
Just an idea.
For sure. All right, guys. Well, thank you all for joining us. That was very interesting. I was really looking forward to this all week, and
awesome. Me too.
That was great actually meeting you after.
You too, bro.
Like watching your podcast for the last 2 weeks and just deep diving.
Awesome, man.
Again, go to Dazed But Not Confused. It's a great channel, and you'll learn a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of good stuff. Yeah, Old Tree, this was an icebreaker, and this was Doug's story. Cool. Although you could probably go into it a lot deeper, but this was a crash course in Doug's story.
Cool, man. Hey, dude, I really appreciate having me on, and thanks for dropping the comments so we could freaking talk about this, because it's not I don't know, bro. There's just so much we could talk about. It seems like we never get enough time to cover all the different subjects, which we could,
I know that was an hour and a half. We skimmed the surface.
Wow, that was an hour and a half. Fuck,
yeah.
Man. Jesus, we didn't talk about anything either. I mean, we didn't get into anything. Not on the surface level stuff. I think we got. Okay, cool. Thank you, bro.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for dropping by, and thank you, Doug.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
You too, brother.